Hi everyone. Welcome to the SIGUCCS webinar, How Apps Anywhere Streamline VDI at Moyne College. My name is Beth Rugg, and I work with the SIGUCCS organization, a part of the Association for Computing Machinery. I'm merely here to help facilitate. I'm really going to, Dave and Katie are going to be doing most of the work. Dave is from Software 2 and Katie's from Moyne College. Just as a few housekeeping notes, by default, everyone is muted. So if you have a question, please use a chat box to send that question in, and Dave will help bring it to Katie's attention. Beyond that, we're recording the session, so it will be available on our SIGUCCS website within the next few days. So with that, Dave, I'll turn it over to you and Katie.
Okay, great. Beth, thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Appreciate the time and our partnership with SIGUCCS. We've been with SIGUCCS now, I think we've been at the conference for about 4 years now, and we'll be a platinum sponsor this year. And some of you we've probably met, so I look forward to seeing all of you on October 1st. Thought what I would do is just start out and give you a little bit of a snapshot on Software 2 and my responsibility, and then what I'll do is introduce Katie here real soon. So Software 2 is based out of the UK. We're based 200 miles north of London in a town called Leeds. We also have offices in Germany and Spain, and then over here in the US. So we service only the academic market, and we've got over 100 customers worldwide. We've got really two pieces of our technology that Katie's going to talk about today. One is the application virtualization technology that enables us to virtualize 100% of Windows apps, but on the other side, the Apps Anywhere portion allows us to distribute any app to any device. My role here at Software 2 is business development for the US. I'm responsible for everything actually in North America that happens here in Canada. And with that, I'd like to introduce Katie McCaffery from Moyne College. Katie's been working in higher education for over 10 years now. She was at Syracuse University, and she joined after that the system administration team at Moyne College back in 2013 and was given management of VMware View environment. Kathy is now the enterprise system administrator at Moyne with primary responsibility for the enterprise systems, storage, infrastructure, and virtual environments for desktops and servers. She also supports end users, that being students, faculty, and staff, or alumni. So she's got a big job at Moyne, and we're really pleased to have Katie with us today. Katie, let me turn over the presentation to you, please.
Thank you very much, and I am delighted to be here with you today. As the folks ahead of me said, I am the Enterprise System Administrator here at Moyne College, and I'm honored to be invited to speak to you a little bit about how Moyne College is using Apps Anywhere in our environment in our virtual environment, primarily to facilitate the distribution of applications to our users. I'd like to get started by letting you know a little bit about the environment that we're working in. Moyne College is a private Jesuit liberal arts college. We're located in upstate New York in Syracuse. We're a small school. We have about 3,500 students and about 600 employees. And we have what we call a hybrid computing environment. We have virtual desktop labs, which are all of our labs are student computing environment. The machines boot directly into the virtual environment. So when the students log in, they're logging directly into our VDI environment. We have physical Windows 10 and Mac desktops for our staff, faculty, and administrators, and we are at 99% virtual servers. We do have one or two hanging out there in sort of a physical state, but we're mostly virtual. When I came on board in 2013, we had transferred the lab computing environment over to the virtual environment. We were using Horizon View from VMware, and when I came to Moyne, we had 10 unique gold images, as you can see on the slide. We had over 150 installed applications on those images. Because many of the apps were actually unable to be ThinApped. ThinApp, of course, being VMware's application virtualization solution at the time. ThinApp was unable to handle a number of our academic applications, and so we simply had to install those applications locally onto the gold images. We did have 200 ThinApps that had to be maintained separately. And then if you're familiar at all with virtual infrastructure, you know that the gold images have to be deployed out into virtual desktop pools of desktops that the users actually log into. We actually had 11 pools running at the same time. We had a sort of a lag in login time, and this was due a great deal to the number of installed applications we had on those gold images. Sometimes login times would be as long as 1:30 at peak use hours. And if you've supported users and if you've ever had to wait for a login, you will know that that 1:30 can feel like 5 minutes, can feel like 10 minutes if you're sitting there really waiting to get something going. So it was a real big problem for our users. The management of so many gold images and so many locally installed applications and so many pools was a huge overhead. We had sort of bloated up from our original vision of a small and nimble environment in which to run virtual desktops into this sort of unwieldy large environment that took many, many man-hours to maintain. Because the virtual environment and our desktop environment were obviously very different, we had separate processes that were required to keep all of those installed applications and the operating systems patched for security reasons, patched for upgrades, updates, and even just installed and updated. And so we would find a lot of times that a version of a piece of software that was running on a desktop in one area of the school would be different from the version that was running in our virtual desktop pool. Our sysadmin, our senior sysadmin at the time, began investigating ways in which to sort of optimize the way we were delivering applications to our virtual desktop users and to our physical desktop users. And when looking into ways to stream applications, came across software to their product at the time was called Application Jukebox, which is now called AppsAnywhere. And AppsAnywhere actually takes applications and streams them on demand to the users who are licensed to use them. So instead of having applications sort of installed in bulk and sitting there waiting for users to click on them and launch them, when a user needs an application, they will simply launch it from the App Store. It opens, and when they don't need it anymore, obviously they will close it. So with application virtualization, we don't have any more bloated images in our desktop environment, our virtual desktop environment. Patching an application campus-wide, we can now do it universally and instantaneously. Control and licensing is also much easier. We sort of have one-stop shop via application or via AppsAnywhere instead of by pool entitlement. The old way we had it is if you had access to a certain specific piece of software, you would log into a certain virtual desktop pool. Now you can log into any pool, and if you're entitled to a specific piece of software, you can launch it from the App Store. Application compatibility is also much easier to handle. In higher ed especially, we have a number of applications that are very, very specialized. They're built for specific classes, mathematics, physics, chemistry. Some of our programming and computer science classes have very specialized applications that need all kinds of bells and whistles and that sometimes just aren't compatible with other pieces of software that are running in our environment. Because we can sandbox those and sort of section them away from the rest of the computing environment, they can run on the same desktop but not interfere with the rest of the environment. The end user experience, therefore, has sort of improved vastly. They can launch any application they have access to. They don't need to call our service desk to have someone come to their desk with an installation CD or a USB stick. They can actually just launch the applications they need from that web store, and they don't need to make the call to the service desk. They don't need to, schedule an appointment. They can just, have that happen right away. So here's where we are now in 2017. We've obviously slimmed this down rather dramatically. We now, instead of 10, we now have 4 gold parent images, and you can see we have one for our labs, one for our employees. One is for sort of a specialty suite of software that requires things like local SQL Server installations, an Oracle server, and one is our IT vendor base. It's for us to use and for our vendors to have access to. We have only 7 locally installed applications on those gold images, down from 150. We've done away with ThinApp entirely, which means we have one less suite of applications to maintain. We have 7 pools, down from 11. And instead of a minute 30, login times at peak hours are now 15 seconds. Management and maintenance of the VDI environment used to be anywhere from 2 to 4 days, depending on how many patches were available, how many software suites needed updating. If the Adobe suite needed updating, for example, that could be an entire day in and of itself. If that was locally installed on 2 or 3, the gold images, each one of those had to be touched. Now it's a day to a day and a half per month. And the AppsAnywhere player is installed in both our virtual and our physical environment. So it streams the same application to both environments, which has standardized our environment across all platforms. So to elaborate a little on that last point, we've really consolidated our application management with AppsAnywhere. We found that having a consistent experience across the platforms has not only improved our user experience, but has also made it a lot easier to troubleshoot problems. From our end, obviously, if a user is having an issue with an application, we no longer have to worry about if they're on a version 3, 3 years old. Did they not get an update? We know exactly what version they're on, and we can immediately rule in and rule out certain possible known issues. We can also make sure that we're patching these very quickly and very consistently, because obviously, if you have 5 versions of a piece of software out there in the sort of in the wild, if a security patch comes out and all 5 of those versions have the patch, you have to figure out a way to get that patch to all those versions. SCCM now only really manages our OS and our drivers, sort of our operation, sort of our OS layer. We no longer have to sort of manage large and bulky task sequences through SCCM because AppsAnywhere manages all the applications. Here's a few more of the benefits of virtualization and streaming the applications themselves, more on the technology side. Because only when the application actually streams to the desktop itself, only 5 to 15% of the application needs to be streamed to the desktop before the application will launch. This speeds up the launch of especially larger applications quite a lot. If you've had experience trying to get applications like Photoshop to launch, some of our academic folks may have had SAS or MATLAB. Some of these can really take a chunk of time. Streaming them is actually a quicker way to launch them in many cases than launching them natively. Because we have a just-in-time delivery, the application isn't just sort of sitting there and waiting on the desktop. The only time it's launched and installed is actually when someone wants to use it. So we don't have a lot of sort of extraneous traffic on the network. We don't have applications out there looking for updates. We don't have them talking back and forth. Some of the apps are very, very chatty. We can actually cut down on a lot of that chatter by simply not having the app installed when it's not needed. And we're able to deliver the same app and version to every computing platform and environment. So we can actually be sure that every machine, whether it be a Mac, a PC, a mobile device, and on, every machine has a safe and vetted and tested version of the needed piece of software when it's needed. A little more on the security aspect of it, which is something that we found a great benefit in. patching, especially in today's environment, I'm sure many of you are on the same mailing lists that I am, and you're getting very many, daily updates on 0 days and, critical alerts and, this vulnerability and this patch and, patch instantly and so on and so forth. With AppsAnywhere, we can actually patch and deploy same day for many of these applications that have sort of these regular alerts coming out. Chrome, Acrobat, Flash, Java, just some of the regular culprits. We can also achieve what a coworker of mine has called pseudo compliance. Obviously, 100% compliance is what all of us are shooting for when it comes to security patching. Pseudo compliance is the idea that when you push a patch out through AppsAnywhere, or if you you sort of publish it to the web store, the only way that you can launch, let's say Chrome, is that you will have to launch the patched version. The old version will no longer be launchable. So everyone is technically compliant, even the people who aren't even running Chrome. The software is installed as needed and can be removed when no longer in use. Again, this calls back to my previous slide with the chatter. Some of these pieces of software do have vulnerabilities. You don't really want them installed everywhere and just sitting there if they're not being used. We can actually push and pull them out with licensing and publishing through AppsAnywhere and make sure that we control who is seeing them, who is using them, and who can't see them and who can't use them. The licensing and delivery is controlled through Active Directory security groups and group policy. So we can get very granular with who can see, who can't see, and who can run what software. And as a side benefit, and something that we heard about as a big thumbs up from a recent external security audit, Lemoyne has removed admin privileges for all of our non-IT administrator users. That's faculty, staff, administrators, and so on. One of the reasons we've been able to do that is because with streaming, obviously, they can install and run this software without administrative privileges. We were used to running ThinApp when we learned about AppsAnywhere, and of course, there's always a little bit of a hesitation when going from a previous, set of knowledge to a new thing. But I will say this: I am not the packager here on Lemoyne campus, and within a day, even I could package and deploy a small application successfully. It's very straightforward. It's a nice, intuitive process we've found, and it does work very well. There's more flexibility and control than ThinApp in what runs and what doesn't, and we have yet to find an app we can't virtualize. You can look inside and strip out things like registry files, error messages, requests to subscribe, anything that runs that you don't want it to run. We can actually strip that out of the application itself so that the end user does not see it. There's customizable app events too, so that the application can run the way you want it to run, not just sort of run out of box. We can actually create batch files to open a firewall, grant special rights to whoever's launching this piece of software, activate the software after the virtualization, but before it actually launches, embed a special license code, things like this. There's multiple levels of virtualization as well. So you can actually sandbox the application away from the OS. So if your piece of software requires you to have a version of Java that's 6 years out of date installed, you can package that version of Java with that application and sandbox them both completely away from the OS so that that vulnerable version of Java is not interacting with your OS at all, and it eliminates the security threat. And with this, I'm going to hand it back over to David for a live demonstration of the AppsAnywhere web store and the S2 hub. Great.
Thanks so much, Katie. Thanks for the comprehensive review of AppsAnywhere in your environment and kind of what you've gone through. That was outstanding. So I need to be given the screen, and I'll take that.
all I've got is Marcus Conway.
That's me.
There you go.
Today.
That's right.
Without a British accent.
That's right. The accent is what threw me off.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. Katie, can you see the Apps Anywhere screen? Just want to make sure.
I can.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thanks. Okay, what I thought I'd do now is show you our Apps Anywhere App Store and just give you a quick tour of that. Katie's going to be here for questions too, so as soon as I wrap up, we'll take questions. But the Apps Anywhere portal that you see here, it's a single sign-on, and most of our clients would go ahead and take this and design it to look like your school. So it interfaces with Active Directory. We've got additional ways that we can also interface, but basically just click on after you have the single sign-on, and then it'll take you into the App Store. And if you can see what happened with the green bar up top there, basically what's happened is it's recognized me as a user and said, okay, Dave, here you go. You can access these applications that you see here, okay? So the application display can be changed if you choose. There's actually other ways that we can display that for you. And I won't get into that now, but I think the key features are that there's a green launch button for each of the applications. So to the end user, launching an application is the same process. You would basically launch the application, and then it would be delivered to the end device. If it's a application that you wanted to have installed, for instance, like Skype, then you can download that directly. Katie mentioned that they got rid of their admin privileges, and that's happened in a number of case studies that we have. And the idea here is that you have a controlled environment, so your students then can just use the correct link, and you can give them the correct link when they want to access applications. I'll go ahead and launch AutoCAD. So I'm launching AutoCAD here. And basically, that's it's running on the end device here. That's the player that Katie mentioned briefly, the cloud paging player, and that's creating the virtual environment for this application to run. This can be hidden. It's up to you if you want to show that or not. So AutoCAD currently is going to be launched. It's launching right now, and just to show you, once that's launched, basically it shows up in the start menu. So it behaves like it would if it was installed. And the first time that you launch that, the 5 to 15% that goes into the player, it basically can be launched from a shortcut menu, from a start button, depending on how you want to do that. And it will run like it would if it was installed. But what's nice about this is that it's booting up right now, and you don't have all the other software that you may have in a device that's imaged, with a number of other profiles and routines that need to happen when they are currently launched. So here's AutoCAD basically running, like it would if if it was on your device. Okay. Let's get out of here. Okay. Okay. So another piece of the App Store too that I want to get into, and we could be happy to show you this in more detail if it's SIGUCCS or at another time, but the way Apps Anywhere is built is that we can deliver the applications to multiple devices depending on what that use case is. So for instance, with AutoCAD, you would launch that in a Windows to Windows environment. You could launch that to a Windows machine, which most engineering students would use, for instance. But if you wanted to launch that to a Mac, you could also launch that to a Mac, and you could take the same Windows package and launch that to a Mac via Remote App, Parallels RAS, or through VMware View or through Citrix. So it's depending on what you have, we can deliver that same package. And what's nice about it, kind of talking about what Katie had to say, is that we're separating the operating system from the actual application. So any changes that you make, even in a VDI environment that Katie mentioned, can be made to the app set. You don't have to re-image those devices. So there are multiple ways that these applications can be delivered. It really just depends on how you choose to set it up, and we'll coach you on how to do that and how your infrastructure is. So when the devices come in, if it's a Mac or if it's a Windows machine, it's a contextual environment where the software knows that here's the device, let's deliver this application the right way to this device, okay? You can also set up categories. So within the categories, you could have different schools within the college or university, Or you could have open source applications, depending on how you want to, or the way this interfaces with Active Directory is only the applications that that student is allowed to access would be displayed here, okay? So that's a quick tour of the App Store, and there are a couple different ways that we can show you the App Store listed here, but I've got the kind of the webinar pieces in place and I can't get to it, but I'll show you one other piece too on the admin side that might be interesting for you. This has been very helpful with a number of our customers, and that is tracking software license usage. We're able to track software license usage real time. So I'll go into the reporting module right here. Actually, I'm going to show you just a quick kind of a snapshot. And this is from one of our customers, University of Surrey. It shows us total applications, the most popular ones, the most used, and then it gives me a kind of a concurrent view of the application, so you can see that the peak time is here, and then these are the weekends for those applications. Now, if we want to drill down into the reporting, I can give you more detail on the application. So we can show you the most launched, like we showed you before, or the most used, or this is a favorite, the most unused one. That would be the professor that's been talking to you for the last 7 years about an old application that all his students use, but when you go on and you see the application, you find out it hasn't really been used. So that's kind of a favorite one that we have. But let me go in reports too, and I'll show you an example of another way that this might be helpful for you. Okay, so I talked about most used, most most popular. Let's go down here and see if I can move this screen here. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to drill down into one application. So I'll bring up SupportWorks client, for instance. I'll click on that, and what it's going to do is it's going to give me the detail for that application. Okay, so let it think for a minute. So the example here is that we've drilled into one application, and we've been able to see that at peak concurrency, we're only running 24 of these licenses basically in a concurrent pool. And here's the other kind of pictorial of the applications, but the total sessions that we've run total would be 40. So we've got an unlimited site license, but we're only really hitting 24 at a peak time. So maybe there's a way that we can shave off some of the application costs there. Depending on your use case and how you track applications, this may be helpful for you. It really depends. We've had some case studies where there's been a significant amount of money that's been able to be saved with the license tracking. So it gives you real-time license tracking, basically. You know, while I have you here too, real quick, I'm going to move this. I'm going to move over my. I don't know if you can see it, but the yeah, there we go. I'll show you the different views too. Here's a view of the App Store that the user can choose to use, and it gives you more detail on each app. So if you had multiple applications of the same version, or if you had really expensive applications that you wanted to basically explain, you can have more detail that way. There's also a list view too. So it really depends on how the user wants to set that up. So that's all I had on the AppsAnywhere App Store. The other piece I would mention to you, if you're interested in a trial demo of the App Store, you can go on software2.com, and in the right-hand corner, you'll see a big orange button that says Try It Now. If you click on that, you can download the App Store and actually launch applications if you'd like from there. Okay, well, thanks so much for the opportunity to show you the App Store. Now I think we want to open it up for questions, please.
Hey, this is Beth. I don't see any questions coming in yet.
Yeah, I don't either.
Oh, here we go. Okay. If you were starting with a traditional lab environment, would you still do VDI and AppsAnywhere?
Katie, you want to take that one?
Sure. We actually use VDI not only for virtualization of the desktops for the labs, but also for our remote access solution. We found that it allowed us to eliminate things like VPNs, remote desktop. And because we've sort of been able to optimize the relationship with VDI and AppsAnywhere? I think we would. Now, if you were going from a straight lab and you had your lab configured such that it was working well for you and everything was and you were happy with how your labs were performing, and you had not previously been considering a VDI environment, I don't think a VDI environment is a prerequisite for AppsAnywhere. I think you could make AppsAnywhere work very well for you in a purely physical environment.
Great, thanks.
Eric's wondering, how does persistent settings work? For example, a user changes a toolbar, how or will that be remembered?
We don't actually use persistent desktops at all in our lab environment. We refresh our desktops every night, so to speak. So every time a user logs in, they get a fresh, brand new desktop. Persistent settings, if they're changing toolbars and things of that nature, do not carry over because the user is logging in, obviously, to a new machine every time. We have found, especially for users who are launching AppsAnywhere on their desktops, that might be a professor, it might be a faculty, it might be a staff. When they customize, after they have virtualized the application to their physical desktop, they can launch it from the start menu, just like any other application. And we found that the customizations that they make have been retained from launch to launch.
Katie, Sandra has a couple questions. What is the impact on bandwidth, both to the internet and on campus, of streaming the apps? And then the second follow-up question is, how many people support AppsAnywhere at Lemoyne?
Support it like in the IT department, or support it like enjoy using it?
I believe support it in the IT department, but Sandy, correct me.
We don't really have, there is no impact on the internet bandwidth usage. We package the applications in-house here, and then we update it on our application, sort of our streaming server, and then the applications are simply loaded onto the end user machines. I don't have the data for how it has affected our bandwidth on campus. I'm honestly not sure. We have not noticed a negative impact in terms of connectivity across campus, but I couldn't give you actual numbers.
Yeah, Katie, just to jump in on that one, that's a question that we're commonly asked, and because with the cloud paging delivery, you're only using about 5 to 15% of that app, and you bring that down into the player for it to run, that it has a minimal impact on the network. We've had people do tests with 250 launches at once in a classroom setting just to look at the launch time, and it doesn't affect it. So we've been that's one of the benefits with the cloud paging, is that you're only bringing down part of the app, and then it's bringing down anything you need in the background. So there's not a very significant impact on the network at all.
As for the support question, there's myself. I'm the enterprise systems admin. I run the VDI environment, and we have an application integration specialist and an academic system administrator here. So there's 3 of us. We also have a service desk who does sort of end user support and other support organizations, throughout the college. But in terms of actually running and packaging and supporting the AppsAnywhere sort of infrastructure and applications and deployment, there are 3.
Thank you. Jerry's wondering, he just wanted clarification, I believe. If I've installed iTunes, is it installed and in need of being updated, or is a new version streamed? So is it not really installed as we used to know?
It's not really installed as you used to know. The computer thinks it's installed, and to the end user, it is installed. However, if we, on the administrative side, push an update to our streaming server, let's say that the version is out of date, it's vulnerable to, let's say, some sort of hack, and we package a new version of iTunes, we push it out to our AppsAnywhere, sort of store. What will happen the next time you click on that is that it will have to relaunch the new version. It will pull the old version off, and it will push the new version onto your computer. So it is it is installed, sort of.
Yeah, and the only add to that is if you choose to install it, certainly you can through the App Store. You can choose which users
you can
or all
locally
users.
Install it, yeah.
Yeah, you can locally install it, and we also AppsAnywhere will detect any locally installed applications as well.
And this may be the last question from Andrew, but can AppsAnywhere do Mac to Mac?
Not sure what that means.
Mac to Mac.
I'm guessing Mac applications to Mac OS.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
sure.
guessing it.
Yeah. I can certainly take that one. So within AppsAnywhere, one of the delivery methods is the ability to install a native Mac application to a Mac. So you know, as Jamf or Monkey technologies that maybe some of you guys have used, that has a wider number of features. We do have the ability for you to take a native Mac application and natively install that on a Mac. The other piece that I think I alluded to earlier is you can also take that same Windows package, maybe that you package for a Windows machine, and deliver that to a Mac through a few different delivery methods.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions that I saw come in. I guess last call for questions. I'm not seeing anything more come in, Dave and Katie.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Katie, for the presentation, and thanks everybody for your time today. I hope to see some of you at SIGUCCS here in just a little bit. And remember, if you'd like to go to the App Store trial, you can go to software2.com. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.